men cry, men break down, men have anxiety,
Right.
men feel insecure, they get angered, have emotions. Um, Men have mental health issues too, Malungi.
Right,
And
right.
it's not unmanly to struggle with such issues or conditions.
Right.
This is why men must be supported, uh, encouraged, and not silenced. So, to your question, how common mental health issues are amongst men, men account for 7% of 7 out of 10 rather. 7 out of 10, not 7, so that amounts to 70% almost. So men account for like 7 out of 10 suicides internationally.
Dear Jesus.
So if there's going to be a suicide, it's most likely going to be a man.
Right.
1 out of 10 men suffer anxiety and depression. I mean, 1 out of 4 will suffer mental health disorders in their lifetime.
Sure.
Now we're talking any other form of psychosis.
Right.
The problem is these stats may not even be accurate simply because men and issues are underreported.
All right.
Like a man is not likely to look out.
Because of embarrassment.
Well, there's a lot of stigma that
Right,
surrounds
stigma,
it, which we
yeah,
can't
yeah.
talk about. But also another big problem to that, Malungi, is that men turn to substances as coping mechanisms, like alcohol, drug addiction, gambling. And so what we normally, as counselors, what we would encounter front is not so much as somebody coming to you for a mental health issue, but rather a drug problem, or perhaps an alcoholic issue that they might be facing. Maybe gambling even for that matter. But when we begin to look a little bit deeper, normally present with any form of psychosis, the first response or the first presentation is anger. Now when we talk about anger, the DSM tells us that we need to look more deeply, because anger in itself is not a diagnosable, or you cannot say that it is recorded as a disorder.
All right.
Okay, but it is a symptom of something bigger.
All right. Up until maybe it comes to what's the word? There's a word I'm looking for, because you get people who get very angry, doc.
Yeah.
And when you look at them, you can see which they've got
anger issues.
Anger issues.
Yeah. Even in that case, although, like I said, anger is not like classified as a standalone disorder.
Right.
Okay, but it is more so a symptom of something deeper.
Right.
And the most prevalent condition could be depression or anxiety.
All right.
So when a man starts to feel anxious, he's going to get snappy. He's going to throw a tantrum. He's going to feel like you're not moving fast enough. I need to do this. So they always like on that high alert, fight or flight mode, as we speak about. So anger goes with the much deeper issues, and that is why it's so important, of course, for men to try to understand the source of their anger. It could come from abuse.
Undealt with.
Malungi, the saddest reality of it is, I'm having grown men who lived with this abuse for all of their lifetime, and are now coming forth to say, Doc, I've been abused as a 5-year-old.
Sure.
I've been abused by a neighbor, or I've been abused by somebody out there, and by the way, when it comes to any form of abuse, it is not relegated to a particular race group or a particular religious group. We must understand it in its context. And you know what, I think this is where the pastor in me comes out, that you got to understand that we are facing a demonic onslaught. And a Satanist once said this, that Aleister Crowley was his name, and he said, give me 4-year-olds, I will distort them, and I'll give you a damaged society. I'm paraphrasing. So basically what he's saying is if we can abuse little kids, you'll have damaged people in society. So that is basically, some of the things. So, due to the nature of mental health issues, it's so underreported because, like I said, men suffer abuse as well.
Right.
And given our societal changes, legislative changes, what we are facing basically is more power to the woman. And listen, I believe in equality. I believe, that women need to be respected and loved and honored. But it don't take away from the fact that there's so much of power in the hand of a woman today that if she don't like you, she can accuse you of something. And if you get, reported to the police for something that you're probably not doing or not in the extent that she's exaggerated it, you get a record. And so men are afraid of that. And so they may suffer the abuse silently. So, and I don't even want to go into the area where if you are in a relationship with a psychotic person, whether they psychopaths or sociopaths, you're going to get stuck in a cycle of abuse. And many of the men even trauma bond. So they stuck in that relationship. It's a cycle that goes on. And so these are some of the things. Yeah, it is very, very prevalent, to answer your question.
And now coming back to the impact that it has on family and marriage.
Well, this is the issue in regard to family and marriage, because it's so, as we say, all pervasive. It covers all areas. But in regard to family and marriage, I think the important thing for us to understand is that firstly with children, Malungi, the emotional scarring of a parent or a father that is suffering some form of emotional setback or mental instability. Take for instance, if the father is a narcissist, that's going to have a major impact on the child. The child will be guilt-tripped. The child will be controlled. The parent will have to be, the father will have to be the center of everything that happens in the home. And so the children then tend to feel suppressed and oppressed in manner where they don't feel free to express their emotional needs, their desires, because it's not about what you want, it's about then what the father wants. So fathers that suffer any form of, whether it be depression, like in the case of depression, there's going to be low levels of parental engagement. Father's going to isolate. He's not going to want to do things that would normally have been exciting to do as a parent. And so that detachment, there's no engagement, a lack of love. By the way, studies were done where they gauged children who were in homes that had both parents and grew up in that loving home environment as God has ordained it to be, as compared to a child with either just one parent or with no parents, where the child, and of course it gets worse as you take a child out of any form of parenting, where you put them in homes and stuff like that. And when you do that, you put them in a home, it says that just the lack of love causes the child to grow slower. It hampers growth, not just emotionally, but physically as well. That child tends to suffer more physical ailments, more susceptible to colds and flus because of a low immune system. Because you must remember, at the back of the mind of the child is constantly playing out these kind of issues. Where's my parent? Why is my father like this? Is something going to happen to my dad? Why are they fighting so much? So from a children perspective, that's what you can expect. But also in a marriage, listen, I think we've covered these areas so extensively in the years. But firstly, your communication goes. you cannot speak to somebody who has, say, depression for that matter, and try to get them to understand the logic of what you're trying to explain. Because people with depression tend to be more emotional. The victim mentality. You don't understand how I feel. You don't know what I am going through. So straight away, communication suffers because one is speaking, probably going to speak about logical things. The other is going to speak about what is emotionally affecting them. And there's no, correlation. They're not understanding it on the same level. They're not on the same page, as we say.
So it affects the marriage big time.
Big time, especially communication. And then, of course, the emotional distancing that takes place. With the emotional distancing, again, if you just take a man that goes through, this is the difference between men and women. When a man is going through some issues, he is likely to close up and try to handle it by himself.
Right.
So he isolates. He distances himself. Women, their natural instinct in dealing with stress is to network.
To go and tell someone.
Right? So they're going to tell somebody. They're going to have to give you. You want to make a woman sick. Shut her down. Don't give her opportunity for expression.
Right.
Close off. Every time she opens her mouth, close her down. And you will have a very sick person. Because they internally now, they start to bottle, they internalize. And the more they internalize, the more the emotional instability that takes place. Because now they can't express, they're not getting enough information in return to build a solid case as to make a determined decision on things. So what they do is women start to assume things. And they start to presume some stuff. And they build a story according to how their mind tells them. So, it has a major impact on emotionally related stuff. And of course, the decreased intimacy. When a person is going through this, the libido falls, they're not in a place where they want to be intimate. And, we are made relational beings as God made us for intimacy. And if we're not going to have that connection, you can be there, but you can be very lonely. And lots of people come and say, I feel so lonely. And of course, then the drug-related issues, Malungi. You can't take away that from people who suffer from psychosis. Now, you can have a drug-induced psychosis, or you can have a psychological condition that causes one to use drugs and all kinds of substances as coping mechanisms. So, the issue here is that the drug-related factor comes into play. And immediately that destabilizes the home. The marriage suffers. And of course, that gives rise to reckless kind of living and all of those things. So the financial distress that comes in due to all of these factors now puts on another layer of chaos in the home. And so one has to be careful that, when you start to see some signs of this, you need to know how to deal with it. What do you do to get help?
What is the solution?
Well, firstly, you've got to identify some stuff. What are the possible conditions that men will suffer with, like anxiety, depression? What is anxiety? Anxiety is like extreme worry to the point of where it goes into paralyzing fear. Then you got depression, persistent sadness. You're seeing your partner sad all the time. They don't want to associate. They're isolating and stuff like that. It can go from persistent sadness to life-altering despair, where they feel like it's just hopeless. I don't want to live. And by the way, 60% of suicides, right? Men account for 60% of suicide. So 60% is a lot. Is a lot. So one has to understand the different conditions. But to quickly, to bring it around for you, just to identify, number one, possible mood changes. That's going to be how you identify it. Erratic or risky behavior. Suddenly they're behaving out of character. Say, hey, this is not how my husband normally used to be. Loss of motivation. Don't want to take on it. They don't even want to get up and go to work. They suddenly got a problem with work and all of those things, right? Loss of motivation, unusual thinking patterns. So they're talking about death. They're talking about suicide. They're talking about getting everything in order, putting their will in place, and so on. Now, those are not, if you take it in isolation, it's not a wrong thing or a bad thing, but taken into consideration with all of the other criteria, you can see that there possibly some kind of a psychosis that is developing here. Behavioral problems, and then they start to again behave out of character. They go back, say if they left drinking a long time ago, they probably will start again. Then you find that there's a lot of cheating that goes on and so on. Withdrawal